5 stories in real estate in 2025. Okay, so the fifth biggest story, tax proposals all died this year. Now, people may not remember back in March of 2024, a question about changing how property transfer taxes were organized. And they created what we called a mansion tax. And the mansion tax failed at the ballot box.
Right.
And the mansion tax would have raised transfer taxes kind of significantly. If you guys watch our show regularly, back in February and March, we talked about this. And it would have been, for luxury, but now in our neighborhoods, the median sales price of houses would have all experienced a much higher, sometimes like $25,000, $30,000 increase in transfer tax at this time of sale. So increasing the cost of sale. That failed, and failed soundly, as I understand it. What did you think of that? That
one could argue that, it's only on those who are selling, because that's who it was geared to, but it still hurts everybody. If I'm a seller and I'm selling my mansion,
or your house, it's not a mansion, it's a house.
You're exactly right. Because with a median sales price of $1.3 million, you're in that mansion tax zone. Right. And if you're going to pay $30,000 more, you're going to think about not selling, because you're at that point, if the money's not there, you're not going to sell. So it bottles it up for people.
The second one would have been, was in December, when the city council was looking at Mayor
Brandon Johnson.
Were
you trying to forget that name?
Brandon Johnson's budget. He was going to fund some of the operations through increase in real estate taxes.
Right.
And that was soundly, 50-0.
Yeah, the alderman. Yeah, they did not like that plan.
50-0. I think the city of Chicago has said, you know what? No more taxes. No more real estate taxes. We're all tired of taxes on real estate.
Well, and here's the other thing to remember, folks. If you're renting out there, you're still involved in this issue, because your rent is based on what your landlord is being charged for property tax. If they raise your landlord's property tax, trust me, you're going to be having an increased rent the next year.
The fourth biggest story was artificial intelligence scams.
Yes.
It is incredible how sophisticated artificial intelligence is coming. They are able to do deep fake videos now. And they do that only, that's the most sophisticated scammers, and they're doing it going after the most expensive transfers, real estate transactions. But in Hong Kong, somebody lost 25 million.
That's a big story, Kyle. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just get so emotional about this. But you and I, this is just the next level from wire fraud scams, which you and I have both experienced with our clients. And right.
So, for example, the one Anne's referring to most recently, this happened this summer, somebody used AI to impersonate a lawyer in the transaction and started to send emails to my client, pretending and sounding exactly like the lawyer to her. And
not auditory, but the same tone of voice, the
same kind of way she talks. The way she writes. It was use of AI to impersonate somebody in the transaction. Things were spelled the way she would spell it. Things were shortened the way she would shorten them. It was incredible. So people, I believe that we have gotten so successful in making transactions seamless and virtual, and we can move. We are about to go back to in-person signing. In person, I am handing you wire instructions. I am handing you. I want you to see me and hear it out of my mouth in my presence. Right. Wire instructions. Scammers, get to work on cancer. That's what would be helpful.
Well said.
Third most biggest story, I'm really interested in your thoughts on this, Anne, is Compass acquired Christie's at Properties. Two enormous agency brokerages have come together, both of which were enormous in Chicago, but also enormous countrywide. Here's where I'm a little concerned, and just a little bit concerned. Big companies need to have rules and everything's laid out in a certain way, because otherwise it's chaos. They can't have all these one-off things, because one-off, yeah, sure, do it this way.
Systems, operations, right.
Otherwise it's chaos. So there are going to be experiences that feel arbitrary to a consumer, because it has to fall into, you're not an exception. You've got to sort of fall into their rule. And not only does the agent support the brokerage, but they support the shareholders.
Exactly. But let me say this, and at risk of sounding like a conspiracy theorist, I want to pull back the curtain a moment. Refkin has been pushing the Justice Department for clear cooperation.
That's where I was going to say. Clear cooperation is a real problem.
It is a huge problem. If he becomes this big monopoly and then he gets everybody to agree that he gets to keep all of his listings within his little group and the public at large doesn't get to see them, that is not good for our consumer.
It is terrible for the consumer. It's terrible for fair housing. It is great for the shareholders. Compass, but it is good for, and it's not even good for the agents of Compass. It is good for nobody except the shareholders of Compass.
Right.
So that's the thing that this behemoth is going to go after. It's really looking for ways that shareholders make money, not sellers, not buyers, and not agents. Second, I think the biggest story for 2024 is the Trump election. One, I think the markets were a little quiet in the lead up to the election because people didn't know what's going to happen, and they want to know.
And that's always typical in an election year. Yes,
typical. And two, he's calling for things that may impact. You read. So one of the things I hate about newspapers these days is every story is this could happen, not this happened. But he's going to have impact on the market. I'm hoping that him being coming from the real estate industry will have a positive impact on the market, that he recognizes the things that make real estate markets work great and pushes for that. But we got to see. And then the biggest one was the NAR settlement.
Yes.
Which was big for us, real estate brokers, but has it turned out to be so big for consumers, Anne?
Unless you're buying or selling real estate, you probably don't know or care too much about this topic. It's only when you jump in feet first and need to buy and sell that you really start to learn about it. In a nutshell, buyers are now responsible for the compensation of their agents. They all need to have agency agreements before they look at property. Things haven't really changed too much in the bigger picture, because sellers, in my experience, are still offering or agreeing in a contract to pay the buyer compensation via a credit to the buyer at closing. But
we are obligated, we in the industry are obligated to spell it all out. If you have an agent who has not spelled it all out, they're not helping you. By spelling it all out, there's just greater understanding. And when there's understanding and transparency, I think there's greater satisfaction.
Well, it's going to really make sure that these agents up their game, right? We all have to show that we're worthy.
Yeah.
That we're providing the right services, that we're doing the job promptly, correctly.
All right. Those were the top 5 stories.